Hello friends, greetings to you all from B.MADHUSUDHAN. I am a Chief Scientist and Head Coal and Gas Technology Division in Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Hyderabad, a premier R&D institute. Has been working in the field of coal and gas technology since last 3 decades. Institute has been focused on development of clean coal technologies, and in the process we developed technologies for carbonization, high pressure gasification, briquetting of coal fines, hot gas cleanup, integrated gasification combined cycle, etc. etc. And I would like to take you onto a tour of the kind of work being done IICT on this very important area of energy, with a view to inculcate in you and motivate you to work in this very important field of energy. It would also throw light on the comparison between the primary resources versus the renewable. This year, the National Children's Science Congress has energy as the main focal theme, and you should consider yourself fortunate that energy has occupied the center stage, and it is expected of you that most of you come out with school level project proposals. My presentation to you, I expect, would kindle thought process on those lines. Coming to my presentation on energy scenario in India on primary resources versus the renewable, contents of the presentation on global resources comparison, then Indian scenario for all the three fossil fuels. Coming to the international scenario, the world scenario on primary energy is somewhat like this. 35% of world energy needs are being met by crude oil, 25% by coal, and 21% by gas. Most of the oil reserves are located in politically sensitive Middle East. The primary energy sector is growing at a rate 2% per annum. Vis-a-vis the world scenario, if you see the Indian status, India is the 5th largest energy consumer. It has a vast potential in exploration sector. 54% of the primary energy supply is being met by coal, 32% by oil, and 9% by natural gas. The primary energy sector is growing at 5% per annum. Coming to the primary energy supply global, slide is shown to you. Draw your attention. Energy requirements of the world have been consistently increasing, most of the borne by the three fossil fuels, namely the coal, oil and gas in that order. And in the bottom portion of the slide, you see a comparison in a 30-year period from 1973 to 2003, where total primary energy supply has gone up from around 6,034 million tons oil equivalent to 10,579 million tons oil equivalent, while the role played by coal has remained constant. Coming to world coal resources, India accounts, as you can see, for 10% of the total coal resources in the world, and this is the table where the comparison for the Asia Pacific versus India against the world figures are being given. You can see India is placed much better with the growth in total primary energy consumption in the last decade amounting to 4.8%. India's energy consumption pattern shown here, where coal is actually serving the energy sector in a major way, while the imports of coal are only. This is India's energy consumption pattern, wherein it has been shown that coal is actually serving in a major way the energy sector in India, while the imports of coal are only cosmetic. Whereas in the oil, if you see, the imports of oil are more than 50% of the total oil. The much talked about nuclear power is only an icing on the cake. Coming to the coal reserves in India, you can see from the map, coal is strewn all over the country in different pockets, and the dull colored ones are all the lignite, that's in Kutch and Mehsana, Neyveli and Kashmir. In all the places you find lignite, whereas all the eastern, northeastern and southeastern parts of the country you have hard coal deposits, which are mostly high volatile bituminous kind of variety. India ranks 4th among the top 10 producing countries, top 10 coal producing countries. It ranks 3rd among the top 10 coal consuming. This slide gives you the history of coal mining in India, from which you can see mining was started in the year 1774. Indian coal quality, general Gondwana coal quality, wherein the Gondwana land refers to southern hemisphere in coal paleography. That means lower portion of the hemisphere you have these Gondwana coal resources. These are mainly subbituminous to bituminous in rank, usually high ash content, 35 to 45% or higher ash content containing coals. Then average heat value is around 5000 to 3000 kilocalories per kg. Moisture is between 6 to 10%. These are sector-wise projected raw coal demand in 2024 to 25, wherein it has been shown that the projected demand could reach a figure of 1147 if the GDP growth is maintained at 7%, or it could even go to 1267 million tons if the GDP growth is 8%. Now let us come to the oil sector, the crude oil and natural gas liquids. Now we come to the history of discoveries and production of oil and gas in the world. You can see since 1920 the production has been increasing. Production has been increasing, and the largest oil field in Saudi Arabia was found around 1950s, while the second largest oil field in Kuwait was found as early as the 1940s. The first oil crisis caused by the Arab oil embargo was in 1973. Coming to history of oil exploration in India, oil struck at Makum near Margarita in Assam in 1867, found Bombay High offshore field in the west coast in 1974. 5.6 billion barrels of proven oil reserves are there in the country, and every $10 increase in the price of oil per barrel would cause a 15% fall in India's GDP. The oil production in India, the oil and gas cater to 45% of India's primary energy. Crude oil demand is currently about 146 million metric tons, while the domestic production of crude is only 34 million metric tons. Natural gas demand is currently about 179 million metric standard cubic meters per day, while the domestic supply is only 80 million metric standard cubic meters per day. The public sector ONGC and OIL, ONGC is the Oil and Natural Gas Commission, and OIL is Oil India Limited. They have the largest upstream companies. They are the largest upstream companies with about 82% share of the total domestic oil and gas production. Exploration and production sector witnessing increased private sector participation of late. Crude oil demand is likely to increase about 235 million metric tons by, and you can see from the slide that 22% of the Indian sedimentary area remains unexplored. That means we have a lot of potential for exploration of this resource. Coming to the natural gas reserves to productions, coming to the natural gas reserves to production comparison. Here are figures for global vis-a-vis the India's position. if you see the world scenario, the reserves are pegged at 6,263 trillion cubic feet with an annual production capacity of 98 trillion cubic feet per year. Thus, the R to P ratio, the reserves to production ratio in years amounting to around 60.3 years. In case of India, you have 37 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves while producing around 1 trillion cubic feet per year. The reserves are supposed to last for another 35 years. Then we have come to the crisis situation. The figures that actually exhibit the exigent situation in the crude oil market, the world global crude oil markets located in Dubai, Brent and you can see from the figures that between 1985 to 2005, the crude oil price rose from around $25 per barrel to around $55 per barrel, whereas in the subsequent times from 88 to 2012, if you see, in 2008 it even touched $140 a barrel. Then we come to the global energy perspective. The world oil demand is increasing sharply. Developing countries and the economic recovery are driving the demand growth, unlike the 1973 oil crisis where the Arab oil embargo has artificially created the crisis. The incremental oil demand is maximum for transport sector. The gap between demand and supply of oil has been widening, increasing import dependence. Resources of oil and gas are dwindling. Much of the oil is located in politically unstable nations. And if you go to the climate change perspective, more than 40% of the greenhouse gases emissions are reported from the transport sector itself. Underlying fact remains that reliable supply of clean liquid fuels. We will now come to focus on the non-conventional energy sources. The renewable energy sources in India are listed here: solar energy, hydropower, biomass, wind energy, geothermal and tidal. Key drivers for renewable energy are the demand-supply gap, strengthen India's energy security, concern for environment, large untapped potential. You have a lot of it, so one should really look into this kind of resource. Though these renewable sources cannot be the mainstay for the supply of energy in any such vast country, these efforts could always be supplementary and could be positively adding to the progress of the nation. Non-commercial sources like fuel wood, agricultural waste, animal dung, etc. constitute 50% of the total energy consumption in India. Is a fact. India installed close to 10,000 megawatts of grid-connected renewable energy by September 2007. Is something which is really we should be proud of. Wind energy market size increased at about 1600 megawatts per year. Coming to the solar power part of it, site's location plays significant role. Average annual temperature should be more than 25 to 26 degrees centigrade. Major players in PV cells. The major players in PV cells are Central Electronics Limited and Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. The government is offering incentives for the solar photovoltaics in the form of excise duty exemption, low import duty on raw materials and components, soft loans to users, traders and manufacturers. This is the solar power potential in India. This map shows you where the radiant energy density is maximum. In the western side you can see you have lot of potential. And then the major players are listed here. We will then come to the hydropower. Consistent high annual rainfall is a prerequisite for hydropower. Predominantly maximum annual rainfall located on the northeastern parts of India, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur and Mizoram. Good water storage management is needed. The advantages of having hydropower: faster startup and shutdown, long productive life. Example, Bhakranangal Dam. Some new hydropower projects proposed include Rampur Hydropower Project, Vishnugarh Pipalkoti Hydropower Project. Currently only 18,000 megawatts, nearly 20% of the total potential is being utilized. That means still you have 80% of the potential left untouched. Coming to renewables, wind energy, it's totally renewable and clean. Wind energy is plentiful, most environment friendly than the other energy, because there is nothing to really. This table gives the gross potential to be 45,195 megawatts, in which around 7,000 megawatts only is the installed capacity in different states of the country. This is the wind resource map of India. You can see some places in the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they are having the maximum wind resource. Some portions in the west and some in our own state, in the Rayalaseema region, are also having good wind potential. India is second largest exploiter of wind energy. Is a matter that one should be proud of. The major players are given here. We will then come to biomass and biofuel. Globally, we are fourth in power generation from biomass. The prominent states in biomass potential, we have Andhra Pradesh, Bihar and Gujarat. Coming to biofuel, you have biodiesel coming out of jatropha, sugarcane molasses from which ethanol can be made, and the fibrous cellulose from which again ethanol can be made. The Supreme Court has ruled that around 10% ethanol should be compulsorily be blending. Around 10% ethanol should be compulsorily blended in the refinery. Power sector in India accounts for 2.4% of global energy. We are the fifth largest energy user. With about 3.3% overall annual energy expenditure in the world. Gross power generation capacity of Indian power sector is around 1,85,000 megawatts as on November 2011. Per capita energy consumption is too low. That's 96 kilowatt hours in the rural areas of the country, as against 288 kilowatt hours in the urban areas of the country, against 2,600 kilowatt hours for the world and 6,200 kilowatt hours in the European Union. That is a matter that we should be really concerned about. The weaknesses in the power sector, if one has to talk about, these are listed here. Insufficient installed capacity for power generation. You do not have sufficient installed capacity as much as required by the country. Optimum utilization of the existing generation capacity not done due to very low plant availabilities, and whatever capacity we have also we do not really use to the fullest extent. And the pulverized coal-fired thermal power generation, which is conventionally being used, has come to stagnation with respect to technology. It means there is not much scope for development in that technology for increase of efficiency or whatever. Inability to catch up with technological developments elsewhere. The integrated gasification combined cycle is one glaring example where we also actually started working in 1980s, but till today there is not a single IGCC plant in the country. Inefficient use of electricity by the end users. inadequate inter-regional transmission links, huge transmission and distribution losses owing to pilferage of electricity, and skewed tariff structure making SEBs unviable. Malpractices of pilferage is really causing a lot of aging network of substations and transformers leading to power cuts and local failures. Slow pace of rural electrification. The rural areas getting electrified, you don't really see much progress in that, and lack of grid discipline among the, most importantly, 19% of country's population, rural folk in our villages haven't yet experienced the electricity. This is really something we should be concerned about.